You are looking at Dalip Singh Saund, one of America's truly remarkable citizens. Though he moved from northern India to California's Imperial Valley in 1920, he was not naturalized as a citizen until 1949. This was shortly after the Congress granted the right of citizenship to the 2,000 Hindus then in the United States. 7 brief years later, in 1956, Judge Saund was elected to the Congress from California's 29th District. He is the first native of India to sit in the Congress, the first Democrat to be elected from his congressional district. The story of Judge Saund's travels, his life, faith, and hopes for mankind are about to be revealed through your host, Terry P. Kane, in the studios of WCKT on First Federal Presents.
Hello. On this, the last in a series of sketches of prominent personalities, it is both heartwarming and provocative to suggest this. Our guest of this afternoon, the Honorable D.S. Saund of California and citizen of our republic, is probably the most unforgettable character I have ever met. The son of parents in faraway India who could neither read nor write, Judge Saund sits now with dignity and works with skill in the Congress of the United States. In 1920, he was graduated with honors from the University of Punjab, and then secured his doctorate in mathematics from our own, the University of California, in 1924. But the then existing Alien Exclusion Act denied him citizenship and prevented him from either owning or leasing property. It was 25 years later, in 1949, before Judge D.S. Saund became an American citizen. And then just 8 short years later, the House of Representatives sent him as a one-man subcommittee on an extraordinary expedition to the Orient. His mission, all by himself, was to improve relations between the United States and Asia. Wherever Judge Saund went, as a one-man subcommittee, in Japan, in Hong Kong, in the Philippines, in Burma, and then in India, he represented and spoke for the American dream of fair play and dignity and justice for the individual. Judge Saund's faith in whatever he may say about his own struggles will make you much prouder of your own American citizenship. Just after Ed Gegenschatz offers a comment to be trusted from a successful, long-established local independent financial institution.
Thank you, Harry. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. You know, every individual, every family, and every business should have a substantial cash reserve which is not subject to fluctuation and is always available when needed. And that cash reserve should be in a savings account. And a good place for that savings account is in the First Federal Savings of Miami, America's oldest federal savings and loan association, the largest in the South, where your money is protected by experienced conservative management and strong reserves. First Federal pays liberal dividends on your savings twice each year, always at the highest rate, consistent with safety. Our current rate is 4% per year. We have 5 offices in Miami to serve you, with free parking on our own lot adjacent to each office. So remember, there is no better place for you to keep and build a substantial cash reserve than in America's oldest federal, the First Federal Savings and Loan Association of Miami. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And now here is Senator Kane with his distinguished guest.
And Judge Saund, you will very shortly, sir, know how extremely glad we are to have you here. But I want you just to relax for a moment in order that I may introduce to you and to everybody else who may be watching and hearing you this afternoon, those handful of fine technicians and artists without whom this program through these last 2 years would not have been possible. So if you will permit me to turn my back on you, sir, for just a minute, we will look, I hope, at Howard Burkhart, who is one of our cameramen. And there he is in the dark, but he is becoming a bit brighter. A fine assistant. We bespeak our gratefulness to him. We turn to Jack Kemper, if he is somewhere in the house, as undeniably he is. And now these two cameras are looking at each other, and you on the outside know about as much concerning this technique as do I. And now we're going to take a look at a man who is well known as an announcer, whose voice was that you heard in introducing Judge Saund this afternoon, Charlie Baxter. And that is Earl Schumann on his right. Charlie Baxter is now talking as an announcer should. Earl Schumann is listening quietly as a camera chief should. And my thanks to both of them. And now, if we may, I'd like to turn to Scotty Bishop, as fine a director as I know in all of these United States. Scotty, if you please.
Open the director's mic, take 3. Camera 1, I'll come back to you on a tight shot on Kane. 2, you give me a 2-shot, and center up, First Federal presents. Stand by camera 1, stand by Kane's mic and guest mic. Hold 1, take 1, and cue the senator.
Thank you. Judge Saund, you are the only Hindu and the only Asian ever to have sat in the Congress of the United States, and you are the only Democrat ever elected to the Congress from the 29th District in the state of California. Will you just take your own sweet time, Judge, and tell us something of the events that led up to your truly amazing decision to campaign for the Congress?
Well, Senator, in the first place, I wish to thank you for this opportunity to appear with you on this program. And I wish also to convey this message from my wife and myself to the people of Miami District, that they have a gorgeous and fabulous place here. I represent Palm Springs in California, but let me assure you that we have enjoyed our stay here in the last 2 days immensely. And your own courtesy and courtesy of Mrs. Kane and your sweet daughter was just simply overwhelming. Now, in answer to your question, I had settled in Imperial County since 1926 as a farmer. I was a PhD in mathematics, but because I could not become a citizen of the United States, I could not find a teaching job. But I was satisfied as a farmer in the Imperial Valley, the only way I could make a living. While I was farming, I never let my interest in national and international affairs slow down. I was always interested in American political life. When I became a citizen of the United States on December 16, 1949, it was my ambition to run for public office. I ran for the office of Judge of the Justice Court of the small town where I had lived for 25 years. Everyone thought that I had no chance. It was not possible for a Hindu to be elected judge. But I had faith in the American sense of justice and fair play. I campaigned hard and I was elected. Then I was not allowed to sit because I had not been a citizen of the United States for 1 year. And I ran again in 1952, and I served as Judge of the Justice Court for 4 years. In the meantime, in 1954, I had been elected as county chairman of the Democratic Central Committee of the County of Imperial. Then I had the opportunity to help in the campaign of the Democratic nominee for Congress in 1954. I became intrigued with that work. Then in 1956, I amazed everybody when I announced my candidacy. From then on, well, the story is well known. I lived in Imperial County, which has only 20% of the population of the district. And the larger county, Riverside, has 80% of the population. And to be frank with you, I did not know more than 12 persons in the Riverside County when I became a candidate. But it was simply amazing how scores of American men and women came over to help me by giving of their time and money. I had a very difficult campaign, but with the help of my American friends and with the astonishment of everybody, I was elected to the Congress of the United States.
Judge Saund, that story is no more intriguing or fascinating or amazing than is your life itself. You told me several days ago about the early days when you were living with your parents in northern India, that your mother and father, neither one of them could write or read. How did it happen that with that background you became a distinguished scholar and graduate of the University of Punjab in India, and then subsequently, and tell us why? What moved you to come to the United States and settle in California?
Senator, my father and mother could not read or write. But when my parents made money, it was their first ambition to give their children the benefits of higher education. I benefited from that. I was a junior in college in 1917 and 18 when the United States joined the Allies in the First World War. That was the first time when Wilson's speeches were printed in Indian newspapers. I was simply fascinated by the beautiful slogans of Woodrow Wilson: to make the world safe for democracy, war to end war, self-determination for all peoples. And through Woodrow Wilson, I became acquainted with another great American war president, Abraham Lincoln. I made an overnight trip to the University seat of Punjab to obtain 2 books on Abe Lincoln. I read the life story of that man and studied his writings. And then I made up my mind that I must go to the country which Abe Lincoln and Woodrow Wilson and others had made so great. I defied the wishes of my parents, but they were very kind to accede to my desires, and I came over for higher study to the University of California.
What did you have in mind to study when you first entered, Judge Saund, the University of California?
I came here to study fruit canning with the desire to go back to India and start a canning factory to can mangoes. But later on, I decided to go into my favorite and beloved subject of mathematics, and I had my PhD in mathematics in 1944.
But you were a doctor of mathematics, though you did not exercise that skill and that talent as a profession, because in those days, 30-odd years ago, as a non-citizen, you could not make a living by teaching. Is that correct?
No, I could not.
Judge Saund, as you have recited to us 2 of your great heroes, Abraham Lincoln and Woodrow Wilson, I know that you began with one hero in India even before you knew anything about these 2 very distinguished Americans, both of which have left great big footprints in the sands of time. Will you tell us who that other hero was and what appealed to you about him?
Well, that other hero, the father of India and that great man of all times, was Mahatma Gandhi. I came under the spell of Mahatma Gandhi when he appeared on the stage of Indian political life and offered to the people of India a new method of passive resistance to win their political freedom and also to solve their great social problems like the untouchability. Mahatma Gandhi was an inspiration not only to me but millions of people in India and all over the world. One time Mahatma Gandhi was asked by an English missionary, your American friends, my American friends would like to hear, say, Mr. Gandhi, where did you get the inspiration of this movement of passive resistance? And without any hesitation he answered, by reading the Sermon on the Mount. He was the man who really tried to live according to the Sermon on the Mount.
Judge Sound, may I ask you, was Mahatma Gandhi a Sikh, as you are?
No, Mahatma Gandhi was an Orthodox Hindu. Sikhs can be considered the Unitarian Society of the Hindu religion. They're not so orthodox. They don't believe in caste system. They believe in the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man in a simple way.
Well, the Sikhs were founded, were they not, some 500 years ago as a reaction in order to fight against what had been historically the caste system through the centuries in India?
That is correct.
I asked you about your faith in being a Sikh because, to my knowledge, in your successful campaign of 1956, some very well-intentioned people endeavored to prevail upon you to join the community church in Westmoreland, California, where you lived, which you attended and which you had supported financially. And what, may I ask, did you tell them in response to their plea for you to become a member of that church so that prejudice would not rear its head in your campaign?
Well, I told them very simply, religion is something which belongs to the man himself. It is his own personal convictions. And with my Sikh religion, I don't see any contradiction in going to any church. Just there is no contradiction in my mind as so far as Christianity is concerned. But I told them I could not change my faith just for the sake of having any political gains. And surprisingly enough, during the campaign, the American people did not make any difference to them at all. So long as I believed in God and I believed in a good life, I was all right for them, apparently.
Mr. Congressman, before you take us by the hand back to India and to Japan and other places where you went, I must ask you one other political question. After you were elected in 1956, I know, for I have friends out there, that they said Judge Sound's election was a fluke, an accident, a miracle. We shall see that it does not happen again. And you were elected then in a very narrow campaign. And these people to whom I make reference, without any bitterness, said, we do not want the judge, we want somebody else. And we are going to make certain that we defeat him the next time. Now, you ran and were elected in 1958, 2 years later. Tell us a little of the contrast between those two elections and what was the difference in majority, if any.
The 1958 election was comparatively a very easy victory. Incidentally, I received 63% of the total vote.
As against, Judge, what you might have received in 56.
In 56, it was about close to 51%. And I had a very formidable opponent in 1958. I think that just goes to prove if a congressman just does his duty, is honest with himself and honest with his people, the people in America, they'll give you a chance.
Judge Sound, on December 16th, 1949, you became a citizen like myself of these United States. Well, that didn't come about overnight. I read somewhere in your record that many years before, you were closely associated with a Hindu Association of America. I think at one time you were its president. What was your part, if any, in the struggles that went to the changing of the law that finally gave the right to citizenship to you and 2,000 other Hindu human beings?
I was one of three who helped to create the India Association of America, and I was honored by being elected its first president. Our goal was to have a law passed in the Congress of the United States which will permit Hindus in the United States to become citizens. We were successful in persuading Congressman Emanuel Sellers of New York and that great American woman, Claire Booth Luce, who at that time was also in Congress, to introduce a bill for that purpose. It was debated for 3 or 4 years, and finally it passed both houses of Congress and was signed by the President of the United States. And we worked hard at it. Sometimes people said, one time a man told me, he said, Doc, you're crazy. how can you expect a bill like that to be passed for the benefit of 2,000 poor Hindus? I said, I have faith in the American sense of justice and fair play, and I'm going to work. And it paid off.
I think the Constitution of the United States, Judge Sound, says that in order to be a member of the House of Representatives of our National Congress, a member must have been a citizen of these United States for 7 years and be 25 years of age or older. Well, to my certain knowledge, you became a congressman 7 years and 16 days after you became a citizen of the United States, and yet, only 6 or 7 months later, the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House, with concurrence by the whole body of the House, sent you off on a goodwill mission as a one-man crusade to improve America's position in the Orient. How was that possible, not for a freshman congressman, but for a man who had only been 7 years and 16 days a citizen of our republic?
As Senator, during the campaign of 1956, my opponent had made the statement that even if I were elected to Congress, being a Democrat, I would have to depend upon help from the Democratic chairman of the committees in Congress, and most of them are from the South. And because of the color of my skin and the place of my birth, they are not going to accept me. I did not know how I was going to be received when I came in Washington, but I was simply surprised and overwhelmed. The members from all parts of the United States and those chairmen from the southern part of the United States gave me every consideration that there was possible. And that is how I happened to be put on the important committee on foreign affairs. And then it was just the goodwill of the membership of the committee and the speaker and other colleagues of mine that they consented to send me on that goodwill mission together with my wife and daughter.
Judge Sound, you're an amazing person for many reasons, not the least of which is that as a freshman congressman, you sit not on one but two major committees. You've already made reference to the Foreign Relations, but you're likewise on the Interior and the Insular Affairs Committee, on which there sits as a confrere, a colleague of yours, a Mr. Jim Haley. Does it happen that you have much work in common and share certain points of view with Mr. Haley from Florida?
Senator, if you permit, let me use this opportunity to say this to the listening audience in Florida. They have a congressman who represents the state of Florida by the name of James Haley, who is at the present time the chairman of the subcommittee on Indian Affairs. No matter what the people say about the prejudice in the minds of the Southerners, there is no greater friend of the Indian people in the United States of America, and there is no man who has done more to help the Indians than Honorable James A. Haley, a congressman from Florida. And I'm proud to be a member of his subcommittee.
It is nice just to sit in your presence and hear you pay such a sincere compliment to one who happens to be in the constituency known as the sovereign state of Florida. Judge Sound, our time, I wish we had an awful lot of it, but let's go abroad now. You started out after not having been back to India, as I recall, for some 37 years. You must not have known how you were going to be received, but you went to all of these places in Asia and the Orient, and will you give us what reflections you care to on how you were received and how we, America, might better our posture with all of that great part of this universe?
It is true, Senator, when I started on my trip with my wife and daughter, I did not know whether I was going to be cheered or booed by the audiences in Asia and India. But I found out differently when we went to Japan. To make it brief, when we arrived at the airport in Tokyo, newsreel pictures were taken of our arrival, and they were shown in 800 theaters of Japan as a regular newsreel feature. And wherever we went, the picture of my wife, my daughter, and myself always appeared on the front page of English and the local papers. In Japan, in Hong Kong, in Philippine Islands, in Indonesia, in Burma, and finally in India, we were received at the airports and at the railroad station not by thousands, by tens of thousands of people who came over there to give an affectionate welcome to the son of India returning after 13 years with an American wife and an American daughter. And to top it all, I was invited by the government of India to address the joint houses of parliament, an honor which is normally reserved to the visiting heads of state. And I wondered why the people in Japan wanted to see the picture of a freshman congressman from the United States arriving in Tokyo in their theaters. Why did the president of Indonesia spend 2 hours with me in a personal conference? Why was I received in India with such affection? And why did they invite me to address the joint houses of parliament? There can be only one answer. The people in that part of the world were proud of the fact that a man born in India and Asia was elected to the Congress of the United States. And Senator, you and I know that people are not proud of something which they don't respect and love. I came back with a firm conviction that there is a great reservoir of friendship, affection, and goodwill for the United States of America. Also, I found out that we have not done a good enough public relations job because the Russians and the communists have tried to tell the people in that part of the world such wild stories that they sometimes even doubt our very motives in giving them foreign aid. I came back and told my story to the colleagues on Foreign Affairs Committee and also to the State Department that we must do a little better public relations job of telling the people in that part of the world what America stands for and what America wishes the people in the rest of the world to have, which is nothing but to give them the same way of life which we have, where we recognize human dignity, freedom of enterprise, and personal liberty.
Judge Saund, you have given us an abundance of good things to think about. We're going to stop right here. I hope I am so privileged as to be your host on some future occasion. Thanks to you and Mrs. Saund for coming.
Senator, I'm going to go back to Washington and I'm going to tell your good congressman from this district, my beloved friend Dante Fischel, that your Florida is just as fabulous as that great congressman always tells us in Congress.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Ed Gegenschatz again, speaking for all of us at the First Federal Savings of Miami to thank you for being with us this afternoon. And our thanks to Judge Saund for coming from Washington to be on our program. This is the last in our current series of VIP programs presented by First Federal for the past 2 years. Senator Kane and I and all of us at First Federal thank you, our loyal audience, who have been with us during these presentations. We hope you will send us your comments, and that in the meantime you will watch our other programs. Danger is My Business, Tuesday night at 7:30 on this same channel. Thank you again, and good afternoon.
First Federal Presents has come to you live, direct from the studios of WCKT Channel 7 Miami. Produced and moderated by Harry P. Kane, directed by Scott Bishop, Ed Gegenschatz, coordinator. This has been a public service presentation of the First Federal Savings and Loan Association of Miami, America's oldest federal.